in PSG. But let's take a look at this weekend's fixtures. Obviously, the big one was Liverpool Man City on the weekend. We're going to talk a lot about that match in our Monday night podcast. Let's start with the craziness that was Newcastle 4, Nottingham Forest 3. Forest goes up 1-0. Next thing you know, Newcastle storms back and decides to rip, I believe it was 4 scored in 11 minutes of play. Crazy. Only for Forest to get a goal and then get one late and hang on. Newcastle hangs on. I'll ask you, as we always do, if we're drawing up the blame pie, more about Newcastle's really good 15-minute period in the first half, more about Newcastle still having some defensive frailties that allow people back into games. Like, who leaves that match feeling better about themselves, Newcastle or Forest?
It has to be Newcastle. I mean, it's essentially a 6-point win in a fight for top 4, top 5, right? So I think it's got to be Newcastle, and I think it comes down to that explosion offensively, obviously. And you gotta you have to credit Newcastle here. This is a Forest side that for the majority of this year has been the second best defensive side in the league from a record standpoint. So to go ahead and put 4 past them in quick succession. Obviously credit Forrest for climbing back in this, but I think that was pretty devastating to watch. And I don't know. They've got some nice pieces, all linked with Liverpool, obviously, with Gordon and Isak, and I'll take both.
I take them all. Honestly, I'll take Hall if they want to give me a new left back. Like there's a whole bunch of players there. The funny part is the only player I'd be like, nah, he's not good enough is Jacob Murphy, who's basically proven he's been maybe their second most important player outside of Isak. As good as Gordon's been this year, Jacob Murphy might have been better, which is scary and hilarious when you think about like his time. Where was he? He was at Norwich or whatever, toiling around, like barely able to get into the side. Before he made his move. So it's an interesting side. We've talked about it before. If Liverpool's midfield is the best midfield in the league, Tonali, Guimaraes, and Joelinton is probably the second best. It'll be really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about how we match up there. Let's touch on the Arsenal versus West Ham match. Is this down to Arsenal not? I know Arteta had some strong words, was very critical of his side for their performance. Do you put this more down to them not strengthening in January, buying them a striker? I mean, I will say we all talk about like Crimea River, everybody has injuries. They are down their 4 top attackers, like literally their striker, their backup striker, their left wing, and their right wing, who is their talisman and best player on set pieces, penalties, and free kicks. So they are down quite a bit. But is this more about, well, then don't go buy Raheem Sterling in the summertime, buy yourself a striker, or in January, don't go try to buy Ollie Watkins just to appease your fans when you know you can't land the player? Like, shouldn't they have been the ones in trying to get Evan Ferguson on loan, or somebody who could have just came in with a warm body to give them a chance?
I think they had to have gone into January and get somebody. So I think it's definitely down to the fact that they didn't address a glaring need in that side. I don't think they've helped themselves. I think what's interesting, if you look at going into this season, right? We thought it was going to be City, Arsenal, Liverpool. And when you look at those 3 sides, what can you say? Well, Arsenal was probably the front runner for a lot of people. I mean, they were for me, essentially, because of how solid they were defensively, right? They had the pieces, dynamite midfield, solid defensively. You've got difference makers across the front 3 until they're injured. So that's kind of how we were looking at this. City was the thinnest side we'd seen from them in years. So we thought maybe they're going to struggle if they got hit with some injuries, right? So, when you look at this was a season primed for Arsenal to go take this title. I don't understand. They have played this season like it's not a priority, and I don't understand it. If you look at those 3 sides, I think Pep has done some things to try to get City back competitive. As this thing has devolved, I don't think any of the changes that Arteta has made has helped this team. If you look at Arne Slot and what he's done with this side, we have been blessed from an injury standpoint, relatively speaking. But if you look at those managers across the three, that Pep's going to tweak things tactically. Arne Slot, I think we talk about his tactics, but what we don't talk about is player development with him. I think he's made every question mark on Liverpool starting 11 a better player, like just in general. If you look at Arteta, you have players like Declan Rice steeply declining, like in terms of like what they mean to the team in their performance. So like, I don't know that Arteta's the guy. I just don't know that he's the guy that's going to get you there. You have a wide open league. It's not Tottenham this year. It's not City this year. It wasn't supposed to be Liverpool this year.
Well, this was their year to win.
Yeah,
this was their year to win the league.
100%. And when you're in second and you're within striking distance and you don't go in January and address a glaring need, to me, that's just mailing it in. And like, that's unacceptable from that standpoint. I know Arsenal supporters aren't known to be the most level-headed, but they have a reason to be really upset in this scenario.
Yeah, I do think that Arteta needs to take some of the blame for it. I do think they've made large strides under him. I have always said that I don't think he's the guy who gets them the big trophies they want, and he's the guy that gets them to the next level. I'll go back to it. I genuinely believe if the board and Edu at the time and the powers that be, if they gave Emery the same control to get rid of players like Aubameyang and get rid of Pepe and get rid of the mistakes that they bought for him, I think Emery would have found just as much, if not more, success with the Arsenal side because the players were coming. Like, granted, Odegaard was a big key, and maybe they don't sign Moreno, but they probably do because the La Liga players want to come play for a manager like Emery if you know that he knows how to coach in those big matches. And I feel like what they did was they moved on from Emery. They kind of acted like the mistake was hiring him in the first place. They made Arteta the savior, which then allowed them to say, we're going to let Arteta get rid of all these guys and give him all this extra time. And I think they did everything for him they didn't do for Emery. And I think it's why he ended up failing. Similar in some ways to like Bournemouth runs, Gary O'Neill out after not buying him players and then brings in Iriola and goes out and gets him a bunch of really good European level players and a Brazilian striker and all this stuff, and then wonders why it turns around so fast. Now, I'm not comparing the two of them, right? I think we all know that the Bournemouth manager is one of the better managers, but let's take a look at the table here, Paul, while we have a few minutes left. Liverpool does have a game in hand on all rivals all the way out through Aston Villa in 8th place. They are currently 11 points clear of the Arsenal after Arsenal's lost. Forest now, that's 3 losses in their last 5. They have Arsenal midweek, and then they play City. This is a very tricky spot for Forest. Like, Forest really needs to get a result in one of these next few fixtures because I could see a world where Forest, before they know it, they're out of the top 4 or 5 and they're thinking to themselves, damn, we had this, like, we had it on our racket, to steal a tennis phrase, and we're serving for the set, and somehow we're fighting for a Europa Conference League place. It might be beneficial to them to honestly not qualify for Champions League and take an incremental step forward. But it'll be interesting. So if I asked you right now to handicap for me, which of these sides between Forest City, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Chelsea, and I guess we can toss Villa into that mix too, but they do have the extra game played plus Champions League ties coming. Which 2 of those 5 do you feel most confident today in finishing in those top 5 spaces, assuming 5 spots get into Champions League?
You know what? I'm going to do the bold thing. I'm going to ignore recency bias, and I'm going to say Forest. I still think Forest because I still think they can do some nice things defensively, and I still think they have players that have just outright pace up top that can get it done. Yeah, it's a bad two fixtures coming up. I hope all of them are draws. Personally, as a Liverpool fan, but like, uh, I I gotta say Forest. I know. So like, I think Newcastle has higher highs. I think they also have lower lows. That makes sense. Like, I think Newcastle doesn't have the consistency that Forest. I know they've lost 3 out of the last 5 or 4, but I mean, to me, across the board, Forest has been fairly consistent even when they've lost, and I don't think I've seen that from Newcastle throughout. City, it's City, right? Like, I just don't like. There's nothing about that City side that motivates me to into thinking that like this is a side that is going to come into matches with a winning mentality. Like, they just look defeated from the time they. I can't remember the last time I saw a City team stroll through a match and not like and look like disinterested. They look disinterested.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they're at the point now where he doesn't know what to do. I mean, he rolled out Kevin De Bruyne, the ghost of Kevin De Bruyne, to start against Liverpool after not giving him starts. He had Silva and Diaz and all these players on the bench. And then you realize it's Gundogan and Kovacic. They just have no legs. They can't run. But I still, for some reason, it's all going to depend. Like, what do those guys want this season to be? Because there's still a part of me that thinks with 12 matches to go, they could just completely down tools and finish 5th or 6th and fall out of the Champions League spots. But then there's parts of me that think like they're just as apt to maybe rip off 5 wins and find a way to win. Maybe they start scoring. Mamouche starts scoring goals. They get Holland back. And ultimately, I won't be shocked if they finish second in this thing, but they'll still end up, in my opinion, 10, 12 points off the lead. And that's because I think that's where an Arsenal capitulate. I don't have as much faith as you do in Forest. And I think it's because I started to see the cracks showing up even in some of the matches they were winning in the last month or so. They got that draw against Liverpool. They didn't play overly well. The goalkeeper had a blinder of a second half performance, or that's a point that they would have dropped. I'm worried too that they're a Chris Wood injury away, and I still just struggle with the fact, and I know they don't concede a lot of goals, but they don't score many goals either. And I just think that at times that might come up to hurt them. And I know they have 44, and you could say, well, Chris, Gally, you think Bournemouth is a great team. Forest did get 7 of those goals in one match, and they got 5 in another. So 12 of their 44 goals came in 2 matches.
Well,
Um,
let's just go ahead and jinx Forest then, and I'll let you know that Chris Wood doesn't get hurt. So I mean, you can stop worrying about that.
That is true. We don't have to worry about that. Brighton, Fulham, Villa, I think they all are just fighting to try to get into those late champion or late European spots. Chelsea, I just can't figure out left, right, or center. They get a lead, they can't hold on to it. Just looks like a side. This crazy part with Chelsea is we went from a world where everyone was like, wow, they finally found a manager who figured out how to manage the squad, to just like you would expect on February 20th. He's like the odds on next favorite to get relieved from his position. And I do think there's I will not be shocked at all if Maresca is not back next season. And he is literally looking for a job. But let's talk here about the bottom half of the table. Big win for West Ham. Draw for United. Unfortunately, kept them level with West Ham. I was really hoping we would start today's show with Man United in 16th position, looking over their shoulder at Wolves on the up. After this weekend, Paul, with Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton, all losing, all conceding 4 goals. Um, to me, we've been saying this is over. I almost feel like Wolves might be safe on 22 points, because I genuinely am not sure Ipswich, Leicester, or Southampton will get to 23 points.
Yeah, I think Wolves are safe, just in the fact that they're going to pick up some points here and there, even if they're draws, high scoring draws or whatever. I don't see any of those 3 teams. I don't see a fixture that those 3 sides of the bottom half they're going to win. Like that, I can like.
Yeah, I feel like Ipswich Leicester and Southampton are basically, or Wolves at this point is it used to be right. In the Premier League, it was 40 points was the magic number, right? If you got to 40, you secured safety. I feel like with how poor the league is now, it's basically 30 points.
Yeah.
And West Ham's already there. West Ham's actual betting statistics after beating Arsenal were 0.00 that they'd be relegated on 30 points in February. So I ask you this, and then we'll jump off this screen. Is that down? Is this a down league, or is this the most competitive Premier League we've ever seen?
No,
And that's why.
this is a down league this year. I genuinely think this is a down league. And again, man, I don't know. Like, I think this is like we talked about this weird influx of TV cash and revenue and what it's done for this league. And like, I don't know that it's good that it's so top heavy in the bottom three that come up from the championship just drop straight back down. And like you have a number of these teams that are just very happy to do that yo-yo from a financial standpoint, take that money and drop back down. I don't know that that's good for the league. I don't know that it's good for English football. It's going to be interesting to see how this continues to trend. But like, yeah, I don't think it's a very good league this year. And the thing is like usually when you have a league that maybe not as strong from a top standpoint, from the top, you get the benefit of more parity, right? I don't even feel like we've gotten that because the bottom is so bad. So yeah, a weakened top and a really bad bottom.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I might disagree a little. I think it is a competitive league. I don't know if it's a great league by any means. I don't think it's the best Premier League. Where I think it's competitive is in past years, I don't think teams between 9 and 14 expected to go on the road and get victories against even top half sides, let alone top 5 sides. And I think you're seeing teams like Palace take it at teams. I mean, they went to Fulham and absolutely plastered them. Like, I think there are those sides like Brighton, Brentford, Fulham, even Spurs. I mean, we all laugh at Spurs getting players back week after week, more and more healthy players, and now they're starting to put together results. Now, do I think Spurs are going to go on a run and get top 7 or top 8? No, but I actually think Spurs will probably finish top half by the end of the season, where I don't think United will. I do think there is something there. Like that West Ham side, they can compete. They just need everything to go their way, yet they're sitting 15th or 16th in the side. And then you have a United side that, has a draw against Liverpool and a victory at City, yet can't get out of their own way in Everton. But then you look at an Everton side who stopped playing Sean Dice ball and started to try to play a little football under Moyes and have strung some results together. So I feel like this league is competitive because of the money spent. I don't think it's a good league because I think the bottom is so poor. But I don't think we should expect anything different. I think every year there's maybe one side that has a chance of staying up in a relegation promotion rel situation. And like next year, I think Leeds, if they don't get gutted, because they kept enough of their core Premier League side and they had the wherewithal for the higher contracts, I think Leeds might be able to stay up. But then you look at a guy like that Reuter at Brighton, and like that was Leeds' record signing the year they got sent down. Like they sold Somerville, and the guy can barely get on the pitch for West Ham, but he's a good Premier League player. I just don't know that any championship side is going to be able to come out anytime soon and play the type of football that keeps them in the league for years to come. I just don't think we're going to see a Bournemouth that comes up and establishes themselves for 5-6 seasons as a Premier League side. I think something's going to have to change in the way that they allocate the money or the balloon payments, because I think these owners are just using it as an ability to profit.
Do you think the Saudi League has had any impact on the quality of play in the EPL?
I mean, I think it had to, because I think it's probably lessened some of the players, right? The players leaving some of these smaller clubs. I also think that influx of older players leaving and going and taking bags of cash. Because where did those players used to take their last bag of cash? From some championship side that came up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I'm not good enough to play at Tottenham anymore. So I'm going to go down and play for Leicester City and try to use my experience in this league and keep them up. And now I think a player like Harry Winks is like, wait, how much are they offering me
Yeah.
to go play in Saudi?
And
Like,
there's an infinity pool.
yeah, well, it's a whole nother thing. Yeah, it's an infinity pool. All Harry Winks is really looking for is to find out if the streaker sends that girl out onto the pitch during major matches. Because I still don't think that guy's neck has recovered from the Champions League final yet. Let's quickly take a look at the midweek fixtures, and they come fast. For any of you fantasy players out there, deadline's tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. So Tuesday, we have Brighton, Bournemouth, Villa versus Palace, Chelsea, Southampton, and Wolves, Fulham, followed Wednesday by Brentford, Everton, Spurs, City, probably the match of the weekend, Forest, Arsenal, second versus third, at Forest, which is not the type of landing spot that Arsenal is looking for coming off a tough loss, a trip to the City ground, all culminating with, for whatever reason, 15 minutes after all the other matches kick off, Liverpool hosting Newcastle. So we know about the fixture history of Liverpool Newcastle, the goals, the 3-3 draw earlier this year. We'll table that one for a second here. Let's start with tomorrow. If I asked you which of those four matches, if you could only watch one, Paul, is it Brighton and Bournemouth, Jekyll and Hyde? Is it seeing how Bournemouth responds? What are you thinking when it comes to Tuesday's slate of matches?
Yeah, I think the real intrigue is on those teams that are 2 through 7 right now. So I'll take Brighton Bournemouth just to see if Bournemouth can continue to sort of play the kind of attacking brand of football that they've been playing. Um, hopefully no one will get a red card within the first 40 minutes of that game and ruin somebody's betting odds. I'm not speaking personally, maybe I am, but I would like to see that game just because I think there's a lot of good attacking talent on both sides of that team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Chelsea can actually come out and put a thumping. I think they need a performance. Maybe no player in the Premier League needs a big day more than Cole Palmer at this point. He's really had struggled with being Chelsea's main man this season, especially the second half of the season. I don't want to hear all this. Oh, he was a one-hit wonder. He's not that good. You either have talent or you don't. We've seen the talent. He's not surrounded by great players, and he's playing under his third manager in his time at Chelsea. So, I think you have to be able to be realistic with that as well. Um, Tottenham, Man City, crazy stat. 5 times Man City has traveled to Tottenham. 5 times they've left with an L since the building of the new stadium in all competitions. Do you expect that to continue? Do you expect Spurs' resurgence to continue? Or is this a match where maybe they get Holland back and him and Mamouche get together and they get at that back line of Spurs and they have a get right match where they kind of celebrate and stick their chest out like the front runners they are?
I mean, that's a great statistic. I think this is probably the most interesting match of the entire weekend for me, just because I think City do have the ability to put it all together here versus Tottenham side that obviously doesn't have any natural defenders playing. But I also think that this is a weekend City side, especially defensively. Tottenham has looked a lot better in the last 3-4 weeks offensively, so I think it's very possible that we see that happen. However, it's just one of those things where are there really signs of life here with Tottenham, or are we just seeing Tottenham going up against the Ipswiches? Right. I think that's what we're really going to find out. So I'll be interested to see what team shows up to play. That being said, this match we could literally get like a 4-3 thriller, or I could also see it just being a 0-0 total dud.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to me too. I do think, you're starting to see Son play a little better. Kulusevski's been great all season long. I do think Tell offers them a different type of player, and then you're getting Brennan Johnson back. You're slowly seeing some of the defenders come back. There's talk that Romero might be fit for this one, which was huge for them to get the center back. Let's be real. Jed Spence is playing so well. He's keeping Pedro Porro out of the side right now, which is kind of crazy. We all saw Jed Spence at Middlesbrough, and we're like, wow, looks like a player there. Struggled at Tottenham, but really seems like he's kicking on right now and figuring it out, especially going forward. So it'll be interesting for me. The other thing I don't think that should be overlooked is maybe the most underrated player on the Spurs side is the Italian goalkeeper Vicario. He's done a really good job, and he makes them much, much better. A couple of the saves he made last weekend were absolutely otherworldly. So it'll be interesting. Real quick, because I know we'll talk about it, but we have to touch on it at the top of the table. Do you expect Liverpool to find a way to get 3 points on Wednesday afternoon? And if they don't, do you have any concerns with it being a Newcastle side that we always seem to have these crazy type of matches against?
No concerns. I do expect a way to find 3. I think the side's good enough to do that versus them. I do think Newcastle does pose a lot of problems offensively. I don't think they're as strong in the past as they've been defensively. And what I like about this Liverpool side is we showed something last week that I don't think we've been able to say for a really long time, is that this side has figured out how to dominate games when they don't have possession. And so, like, that may be the case in this match.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's a good shout. The other thing is if you told me that like they were fully fit, I might worry a little more. I think like I can't believe I say this out loud, but I just think that even with a team of Isak and Gordon and all these great players, I I think Joe Linton makes the whole thing go for them. And him being out changes everything in their midfield because he's just such a powerful runner. And similar to Soboslai, he does so much work off the ball that he makes it easier for the attackers and the players around him. And every time we play him, he just seems like a menace because he's just a huge jamoke in the box, and you just got to deal with him all over the place. And him being out, I just think is a massive, massive blow. And if you got it, and I mean, I know Tonali wasn't even fit to start. That might have been with one eye on this match midweek. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I too think they'll get all 3 points. I am excited for the performance. So for everyone here.